Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Suburban Driving with Miranda. This week I'm doing something a little bit different. We're going to check out my own personal vehicle, the 2019 Volkswagen eGolf. Full disclosure, this is not a media car. This is my boyfriend's personal vehicle. It is a 2019 Volkswagen eGolf. He bought it roughly a year ago. We got it last August. So we've lived through a summer, a fall, a winter, a spring with this vehicle. We have lived with it in terms of getting to work and back, for him anyways, school drop-offs, activities, we've driven into the country, etc., etc. So I thought it was a pretty good idea to talk about this vehicle, especially since the 2020 Volkswagen eGolf. Now, if you go to a Volkswagen dealership, you will see exactly this vehicle. So it's still relevant. The fact that it's 2019 doesn't change anything because it is the same car. So why did you buy an eGolf? You know, this is our family car because I don't own one. I don't have to. I haven't in years. So there's no reason for me to, and I'm not a collector of old beat up cars that I need to fix like a lot of my journalistic colleagues. I prefer new cars and I prefer changing it up every week. So the reason I suggested my other half to buy the Volkswagen eGolf was primarily because his old car was just terrible. And I'm not going to say what it was because it's just not even worth mentioning. Suffice it to say, I did not start dating him because of the car that he drove. Not at all. And truthfully, he doesn't know a whole lot about cars and could care less. He is not into their drivability. He doesn't care about performance. He doesn't care about speed or how they sound. I mean, he likes a nice looking car, that's for sure. But everything else is really just unimportant to him. So knowing all of that and knowing the distance that he drove to work, our lifestyle, what we did, the distances that we drove, and the fact that he was pretty sick and tired of paying for gas. The gas prices last year were extremely high around the time that he decided to go for the eGolf. So he was looking at EVs, and over the year or so that we had already been together, he had the chance to ride passenger in a couple EVs that I had had, and hybrids as well, and they definitely appealed to him. But what made me suggest the eGolf to him the most was the fact that of all the EVs out there, I find the Volkswagen eGolf the most non-EV EV. Let me explain. There's no learning curve getting into this vehicle. So you get into the eGolf and it's essentially like getting into a Volkswagen Golf. It looks exactly the same. You've got the same shifter, you have the same center console, you have the same gauge cluster. There's no weird buttons, there's no screens, there's no oddly shaped little teeny tiny shifter knob that you don't know if it's going to start the car or not. It also doesn't look like a spaceship on the outside. It looks like a gorgeous brand new Volkswagen Golf, you know, super classy, great shape. And the fact that you can get in the car and just go makes it so much more appealing for those who want to buy into that EV lifestyle but are afraid of the technology and how hard it is to get used to it. And truthfully, he got in this car and he had never driven it before. So he bought the vehicle solely on my recommendation, never having been in it before, never having driven it before. He ordered it, got it 3 or 4 months later, picked it up from the dealership, and that was the first time he had ever driven an eGolf. And from that moment, he has loved it, and it has been absolutely phenomenal for our family life and our activities. And having it during COVID, during our lockdown rather, since we're still in COVID, during lockdown when I didn't have any media cars and we still had to go out and you still need groceries and we still had to do certain things even though we were quarantined at home. The fact that we didn't pay for gas during those, 100 plus days of being at home. I mean, looking at my bank account, not having to pay for a gas vehicle, it really kind of opened up my eyes. I already knew the benefits of EV, but I can only assume that every other person with a gas-powered vehicle at home that sat parked for months at a time, looking at their bank account statements going, oh my God, I'm not spending that $100, $120, $150 a month on gas, and seeing that savings, the appeal of EV skyrockets. And honestly, like, we loved the eGolf before that, but that just kind of solidified the reason why he got it. That aside, let's talk about the drive. So the difference in driving the gas-powered Golf versus the eGolf. So right away, there is absolutely no power lag. That's the beauty of a battery-powered car. You don't have to worry about a turbo spooling up, supercharger. There's no lag. There's no anything really. Off the line, this thing is quick. It has 183 horsepower, and that is with an 83 or 85 point something kilowatt battery. It's going to be somewhere on the screen here. My editor fixes that for me. So the kilowatt battery gives it this power. It has a huge amount of torque. That's also the beauty of a battery-powered vehicle. I love that pull off the line. It's fast if you want to pass. In terms of its range, that's also a big concern with electric vehicles. That's something that people always ask, can I live with it? They have that anxiety of like, will it get me to work? Will it get me to my kids' school? Will I be able to do everything without having to stop and charge and blah, blah, blah. So Volkswagen has this rated at, like, best case scenario, 230 kilometers, and that's like top for them. I think if you look on the website, it says around 200, the 198, 200 kilometer, which is a little bit less than a normal tank of gas for an economy car. So you're looking at usually like a 300 kilometer range for a full tank of gas, 3 to 350. So the 200, and that's like full to empty. If you drive this car correctly, you will regenerate and you will gain kilometers as you drive. If you use the regen braking, if you hypermile a bit, if you coast, if you set cruise control, you don't hit the throttle a lot, all things that I don't do. But my boyfriend does, and he gets an insane amount of range out of this thing. I think last summer he managed to get his full tank of battery rather, up to 270 kilometers, which is mental. Like, I get in and it knows that I'm driving and I just see the range drop drastically. I mess up the algorithms. He'll tell you all about it. I just like to drive the car. Normally, I am not a big hypermiler. There are times that I have been, and I realize when I need to be conservative. But if I know I'm just doing, quick jaunts, West Island, home, I'm on the highway mostly. I don't put it on cruise control. I regulate the throttle as much as I can. I do put it in B mode, which really captures more of the power. So that is the heavy braking. So just like the i3, just like the Leaf, like most EVs, with the way the B gear works is you lift your foot off the throttle and it's almost like a downshift. So it starts to brake for you because it's actually clamping down on the brakes, and it's recouping that energy that you get from braking and putting it back in the battery, more so than if you just took your foot off the throttle and coasted to a stop, and even more so than if you hit the brakes. The fallacy with EVs is that if you're constantly riding the brake, you're going to be getting more juice into your battery, but that's wrong. The gentler you are with your braking, the more energy you recoup. So if you're slamming on the brakes all the time in your electric vehicle, you are not doing yourself any favors in terms of recouping energy. Sorry, I got distracted. There's another eGolf in front of me. And speaking of eGolfs on the road, they were supposed to discontinue this vehicle a couple of years ago. They have been talking about it, Volkswagen. I say they, I mean Volkswagen has been talking about this for a long time. No more eGolf, no more eGolf. They're coming out with their new ID series, which is their new EV lineup. And the eGolf was supposed to go the way of the dodo bird, but it seems that people quite like this vehicle and they keep wanting to buy it. So there is a bit of a wait time for it. Like I said, we waited about 3 or 4 months. I know somebody who waited almost 10, 11 months for hers, but she was one of the first to get it in Quebec. This thing came straight from Germany, which I think is amazing. Build quality on these cars is fantastic. Another reason that I suggested Volkswagen. They're solid little cars. There's no rattles. The buttons, the knobs, everything feels good. You get that clunk when you close the door, and yet the steering is tight. It just feels overall good, and it feels like a Golf, and that's the best thing about this electric vehicle, honestly. And you can ask anybody who's known me for long enough. I don't like EVs, and I don't like hybrids. I like power, I like noise, I like a big engine, I like a manual transmission, I like gears. This thing doesn't have any of that. But I really like driving it. And from the moment I got into it for the first time years ago, I kind of fell in love with it a little bit because it's a Golf, and the Golf is a great car. Take out the engine and you just save yourself paying for gas, so it becomes an even better car. Inside the Volkswagen eGolf, I'm not gonna worry about the year because I said it's the same thing, 2019, 2020. If it's around for 2021 model year, it'll likely be exactly the same. It is a Golf. So the difference between the eGolf and a regular Golf is essentially the blue stitching and the B gear down here. You get the nice eGolf on their little storage section here. It has a nice big screen. So this is the comfort line version. It's not the highest level, it's the one just below. So it's got the leatherette seats. It has the larger 8-inch touchscreen with CarPlay and Auto Android and all that really great stuff. I love this center stack screen. Super clear, really easy to use, very user-friendly. I like the analog gauge cluster here along with the digital in the middle, so you have your range. You've got your gas gauge. Again, it's a Golf. They just put in some EV stuff to make it work with the battery. Super roomy. The visibility in this car is great. Nice high roof line. Back seat is great. Owen goes back there all the time. He's got plenty of room. We've used this car to transport a number of things that we thought might be too large to fit in here. Seems to work out. It is a very practical vehicle. That's the beauty of a hatchback. It's kind of like a wagon, obviously just a little bit shorter, but very, very comfortable. And I even have heated seats in this one. So in the winter, it's really, with the battery in the winter, it's a game of, and it is a bit like a game. I see it as that. Can I make it, how far can I get on a tank of gas? It's like beating my best score. And in the winter, it comes down to how you precondition your vehicle. So when it's plugged in, the idea is that your car turns on while it's still plugged in and while you're still in the house getting ready to leave. It heats itself up. There are coils in the windshield here that will melt the ice and snow on the front. You can turn the heat on in your car, set it to a certain temperature. So let's say you want it to be 30 degrees in here by the time you get in, hoping that it will melt off most of the snow. You get in, your car is hot, and the idea is then that you're not wasting battery power by jacking the heat and the defrost the moment you get into the car like we all do with our gas-powered vehicles. And that is a really smart and efficient way to get through the winter with an EV. Because if not, then you really are going to waste and power through your battery a lot faster than you will want to when it is colder. And you really have to think about that if you are thinking about purchasing an EV and you live here where it gets very cold. But we made it through the winter, and on average, I think his range dropped from that 250, 270 range to in the 190s, sometimes down to 170, 180. If it got really, really cold, like those days when it was like minus 45, that was just ridiculous. And like no car did well then. Even the gas powered ones struggled. I've had windows not open, doors not closed properly, heating vents freeze over. So it's not just the EVs that struggle in our winters. Trust me, we all suffer. Otherwise inside, like I said, super standard Volkswagen fare. I love the way the knobs feel. Steering wheel, super comfortable, a little bit of a flat bottom. I always like that. The blue stitching is gorgeous on the steering wheel, and here you also get a bit of blue on the front grille, which alludes to the fact that it is eGolf. It says eGolf in the front, and like no other Golf, it has really cool square LED lights on the bottom, so you know when an eGolf is coming towards you, even though it looks just like a regular Golf, because it stands out from the rest. As I keep saying, this is a Golf. You're gonna get sick of hearing it soon, but it's true. That's why they're kind of so hard to spot on the road. Really, the only difference is the subtle blue line across the front grille, the eGolf badging, obviously, and the really nifty looking squared out LED fog lights that are in the front. Otherwise, and the fact that there's no tailpipe. So obviously no engine, no reason for exhaust. So there is a completely flat bottom rear bumper, which is pretty cool to look at. But again, really subtle, hard distinguishing features to spot on the road if you see one go by quickly. Of course, you have the aerodynamic wheels as well. The ones that are on this vehicle were the standard wheels that came with the eGolf. Eventually, we will change them up, find something a little bit lighter, maybe even a little bit more aerodynamic and more efficient. The idea with an EV is to make it as range-friendly and efficient as you possibly can, obviously, so you don't want to be adding a heavier wheel. But back to the look of the car. Overall, the Golf is a classic shape. It is a classic style. I have driven many iterations and years of this vehicle, and to me, it just gets better with age. It looks as good as it did now as it did 10, 12, 15 years ago. They just seem to improve on their package every single year, and I'm not quite sure how they do it, but they do. All right, guys, that's it for me. This has been the 2019 Volkswagen eGolf. As you can see, we absolutely love owning one. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you know you can hit me up on Instagram or Twitter at Miss Miranda L, or on Facebook at Miranda Lightstone. Hope to see you guys next week. Thanks for checking in.